I think the simplest explanation, you got a lot of very rich, very powerful people. You got a lot of missing money, and you got a lot of people who have died who have connections to this family, which again has wielded just unchecked power in this low country region of our state for more than a century. That's the trailer. I mean, you start digging into it, obviously you've got different focal points to the story that I think lend some context to it. Obviously, the most significant one being the double homicide that took place in June of 2021, and which has led to the trial that we're all currently fixated on. But I think the incident that really started it off was the death of Stephen Smith in the summer of 2015. Again, this is a death that we don't know whether it will end up being tied to the Murdaugh family, but the Murdaugh family name was all over the initial investigatory report related to Stephen Smith's death. That has sort of led to renewed scrutiny of the family. And certainly after the double homicide, our state law enforcement division here in South Carolina, which is the agency investigating the double homicide, they announced a few weeks after the double homicide that they had reopened, or rather officially opened, a homicide investigation into Stephen Smith's death based on information they obtained from the double homicide crime scene. So all of a sudden, you've got a current graphic crime that made national headlines is now being linked to this crime from 6 years earlier. But again, that's just a few of the deaths allegedly linked to this family. You've got the 2018 death of their housekeeper, which led to a settlement in which Alex Murdaugh allegedly stole $4.2 million from the family of the late housekeeper. Again, questions about her death. There's actually, again, another investigation that was opened into her death following the double homicide. We still don't know exactly what the circumstances of her death were. And then, of course, the boat crash, which is really when all of this exploded publicly. So you've got a 2015 death, a 2018 death, and then on February 24th of 2019, you have the boat crash in which Alex Murdaugh's younger son, the late Paul Murdaugh, was allegedly driving his father's fishing boat with 4 of his friends in tow. They ran into a piling on a bridge in Beaufort County, South Carolina, while the boat was traveling at a very high rate of speed. And the crash killed a 19-year-old from Hampton, South Carolina. Her name was Mallory Beach. Her death has led to a civil lawsuit, which has threatened to expose, rather, a lot of the financial crimes that Alex Murdaugh stands accused of. But that's the other layer of this case, is the financial crimes. For a period of over a decade, Alex Murdaugh, according to state prosecutors, has been ripping off former clients, ripping off fellow lawyers, ripping off his own law partners, ripping off the taxpayers. He's been indicted on income tax evasion charges, but currently facing 99 different fiscal crime charges, alleging he's stolen more than $10 million from people. And so the theory of the state in the double homicide case is that he was about to be exposed for that decade of theft, and that he killed his wife and son in an effort to buy time, to prevent that day of reckoning, and to essentially keep the cover-up going so he could buy a little more time to try and dig his way out of that hole. Now, Murdaugh is currently on trial. It's actually 4 charges he's facing. He's facing 2 counts of murder. In South Carolina, there's no first degree, second degree, anything like that. There's just murder. So he's facing 2 murder charges and then 2 charges of use of a deadly weapon in the commission of a homicide. So 4 charges in total. The trial began on January 23rd in Walterboro, South Carolina. The reason it's in Walterboro is that that's the county seat of Colleton County, which is the county where the murders took place back on June 7. Again, the state's case so far has been circumstantial in nature. There is detailed cell phone data documenting the movements of the parties on the night of the murders, which certainly indicate that Alex Murdaugh either attempted to create an alibi with his phone, or at the very least, some very suspicious activity on his phone, and the phones of the 2 victims, which both stopped within half a minute of each other, clearly indicating the time that they were murdered, which was about 8:49 p.m. on that evening. There's the cell phone data, which paints a very damning picture for Alex Murdaugh. There is ballistics evidence that's been found on the scene, which links the bullets that killed Maggie Murdaugh to a gun that's owned by the family, which is missing By the way, the guns are missing. The clothing that he wore the night of the murders is missing. His alibi, we found out this week. Again, Fitz News, my news outlet, has reported extensively on this for weeks leading up to the trial. But we finally, during the trial, the public got to hear the video which exploded his alibi. He had told police that he was nowhere near the scene of the murders at the time they were committed. But the evidence that's been introduced by the prosecution revealed that he lied about that. He was actually at the scene of the murders literally minutes before they were committed. About 5 minutes before he was killed, Paul Murdaugh sent a Snapchat video to his friend Rogan Gibson. Rogan Gibson's dog, Chocolate Lab, apparently named Cash, was in the kennels at Moselle, the Murdoch hunting property. Something was wrong with the dog's tail, and Rogan Gibson asked Paul to send him a video of the dog's tail so he could see what was wrong with it. And on that video, you can hear Maggie Murdaugh and Alex Murdaugh in the background.
Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth.
Bubba. Hey, Bubba.
That's a guinea.
This is a chicken.
Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash.
Come here, Bubba.
Cash. Quit.
In fact, it's Rogan Gibson testified he was 100% certain it was Alex Murdaugh, and the second witness, Will Loving, for the prosecution, another one of Paul Murdaugh's friends, also heard the video, testified 100% certain it was Alex Murdaugh in that video. Now, you can't see him, but you can hear his voice, and he's clearly at a place where he told law enforcement he was nowhere near. And again, 5 minutes before the killings. So it was damning. The jury clearly saw that video and looked at him in a completely different light after that. In fact, that's when the jury, I noted, really began paying close attention, not just to the witnesses and the exchanges with attorneys. That's when they started looking at Alex Murdaugh very closely. And I think that was the moment that the state really, again, gained some big momentum in this case. I'd still, as well as the state's done, as much as the jury seems to be really buying into it, and I'm telling you, I've been in there almost every minute that the jury's been in there, and the jury was fixated on the cell data, just fixated on it. They were following it incredibly closely. They were absolutely stunned by the alibi video that exploded his alibi. You could see it on their faces. And certainly the ballistics information, even though that was introduced late in the day on a Friday, making that connection to the bullets that killed Maggie Murdaugh and the other projectile casings found on the property, they were buying into that as well. So I don't know if it's enough to push it over the line. Again, without a murder weapon, it's always going to be difficult, but I think the state's doing what it needs to do so far. They just have to continue. And again, they've got to be able to weather the pushback from Murdaugh's attorneys, because he's got two of the best criminal defense lawyers in the state representing him.